The Easter weekend in London was supposed to be quiet, slow, and forgettable. Wealthy business owners locked their jewelry shops, tourists filled expensive restaurants, and security guards across the city settled into routines they had repeated hundreds of times before. Deep beneath the streets of a famous diamond district, millions of pounds worth of diamonds, gold, cash, heirlooms, and secrets sat hidden inside reinforced vaults that owners believed were untouchable. Nobody realized that a group of elderly criminals was preparing to commit one of the strangest and most surreal burglaries in British history. At first glance, the men involved did not look dangerous at all. Most were older, slower, and physically far removed from the image people normally associate with elite thieves or violent gangsters. Some walked with visible stiffness, others struggled with age-related health problems, and nearly all of them looked more like retired grandfathers meeting for tea than professional criminals preparing for a massive heist. That appearance would become one of the most important weapons they possessed because almost nobody expected elderly men to pull off a crime that looked ripped directly from a Hollywood movie. The vault itself was designed to inspire confidence bordering on arrogance. Thick concrete walls, industrial steel doors, alarms, motion sensors, locks, surveillance systems, and underground positioning all combined to create the feeling that nobody could realistically break in without triggering immediate capture. Clients stored family fortunes there because they believed modern security technology made such facilities nearly impossible to rob successfully. The vault represented more than physical protection because it symbolized trust, wealth, prestige, and permanence. The men planning the burglary studied those assumptions carefully. They understood that wealthy people often become blind to weaknesses when surrounded by systems marketed as invincible. Security measures created psychological comfort, but comfort can also create complacency, and complacency leaves openings that disciplined criminals know how to exploit. Instead of rushing recklessly, the group spent months preparing with patience that only experienced offenders could maintain. Many members of the crew had spent decades drifting through Britain's criminal underworld. Some had histories involving burglary, theft, fraud, or organized crime stretching back to earlier eras of London gang culture. They were not young thrill-seekers searching for fame because most had already lived entire criminal lifetimes before this operation even began. Age had slowed their bodies, but experience had sharpened their understanding of risk, surveillance, routine, and human weakness. One of the strangest aspects of the case was how ordinary their preparation looked from the outside. They met quietly, talked cautiously, and blended into everyday life with almost unsettling ease. Elderly men moving through London rarely attract suspicion because society often associates age with harmlessness rather than danger. That invisibility gave the crew freedom to scout locations and study routines without drawing the attention younger criminals might have triggered instantly. The operation was planned around the Easter holiday for very specific reasons. Businesses would close for several days, streets would become quieter, and employees connected to the vault would be less active during the long weekend. That gap created precious hours during which suspicious activity might go unnoticed or response times might slow. Every successful burglary depends partly on timing, and the crew understood timing better than most professional criminals. As Easter approached, London moved normally through its crowded rhythms. Office workers rushed through train stations, tourists photographed famous landmarks, and luxury shoppers drifted through wealthy districts carrying bags filled with expensive purchases. Nobody walking through the Diamond District realized that one of Britain's most infamous crimes was already quietly unfolding beneath their feet. The contrast between normal life above ground and criminal preparation below, it would later fascinate investigators and journalists alike. The crew eventually entered the building using methods investigators later described as surprisingly old-fashioned mixed with calculated precision. They were not cybercriminals using futuristic hacking systems or high-tech spies disabling satellites from secret vans. Much of the operation depended on patience, physical tools, practical experience, and careful observation developed through decades of criminal activity. In many ways, the heist resembled something from an older era of organized crime rather than a modern digital operation. Once inside the building, the group faced the challenge that truly defined the robbery. Reaching the vault itself required moving through layers of security while avoiding detection long enough to complete the break-in. The deeper they moved into the building, the more dangerous every decision became because even small mistakes could trigger alarms, summon police, or trap them underground. Yet the crew continued methodically, behaving less like panicked burglars and more like aging engineers completing difficult maintenance work. At one point during the operation, the criminals used an industrial drill to penetrate thick concrete near the vault. The image later shocked the public because it sounded almost absurdly cinematic. Elderly thieves drilling through reinforced walls beneath London during a holiday weekend felt less like reality and more like the plot of an exaggerated crime comedy. But behind the strange imagery existed genuine danger, because one error underground could have resulted in collapse, entrapment, or armed confrontation. Inside the vault sat hundreds of deposit boxes belonging to clients who trusted the facility completely. Many contained diamonds, gold, watches, rare jewelry, confidential documents, family heirlooms, and cash reserves hidden away from public view. Some boxes held objects with emotional value impossible to replace regardless of insurance payouts. The criminals knew they were not simply stealing property because they were invading deeply personal spaces connected to people's histories and identities. Above ground, London remained almost entirely unaware. Families celebrated Easter, tourists wandered through the city, and businesses sat closed behind locked doors. The peaceful atmosphere outside contrasted sharply with a criminal frenzy happening below the streets where elderly burglars sorted through fortunes hidden inside steel containers. That eerie separation between ordinary life and hidden crime became one of the most haunting elements of the entire story. The crew reportedly encountered technical difficulties during parts of the operation. Equipment malfunctioned, physical exhaustion became a factor, and progress slowed more than expected. Unlike glamorous movie thieves who move flawlessly through impossible situations, these men were aging criminals dealing with real-world complications inside dangerous conditions. Their success depended not on perfection but on persistence and experience managing problems under pressure. When the burglary was finally discovered, shock spread rapidly through London's jewelry industry. Business owners, investors, insurers, and wealthy clients struggled to comprehend how such a supposedly secure facility could suffer such catastrophic failure. News reports exploded across television and newspapers as journalists described the elderly suspects, underground vaults, millions in stolen valuables, and bizarre circumstances surrounding the heist. Public fascination intensified almost immediately because the story sounded unbelievable. Police investigators initially faced enormous pressure. A massive security breach had occurred in one of Britain's most famous jewelry districts, and the criminals appeared to have escaped successfully with fortunes in stolen goods. Authorities needed answers quickly because public confidence in secure vault systems was collapsing. The burglary also embarrassed security professionals who had marketed such facilities as nearly impenetrable. As investigators studied surveillance footage and forensic evidence, the strange personality of the crime became increasingly clear. This was not random smash-and-grab chaos committed impulsively by desperate amateurs. The operation involved planning, patience, technical preparation, timing, and detailed understanding of the building's weaknesses. Yet, at the same time, the suspects themselves often behaved in ways that seemed bizarrely human, flawed, and almost comedic. In the end, the burglary became more than just a crime story. It evolved into a bizarre modern legend about aging criminals, hidden fortunes, underground vaults, and the dangerous illusion of invincible security. The world laughed at the absurdity of elderly thieves pulling off a Hollywood-style heist, but behind the strange humor existed real victims, shattered trust, and millions lost forever. Long after the headlines faded, the story continued haunting London like a dark comic book tale brought horrifyingly to life.